Hello, Oscar watchers. Funny thing happened on the way to the box office. As we're recording this, we're a few days out from Joker's opening weekend in theaters and setting a new October box office record, grossing almost $100 million in its first 3 days. I'm here with Susan Wloszczyna, who has been tracking the Oscar race every week at Gold Derby. So first off, Susan, have we seen major changes for Joker in our odds for Best Picture or Best Actor since it opened during last week?
Well, the biggest beneficiary of people seeing it and hearing about it is it's been Joaquin Phoenix. And I think right now, among the experts, he is tied with Adam Driver with 4-1 odds.
And they're tied in the odds, but actually Joaquin has one more expert predicting him to win, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. It's probably me, but I think I just moved over and picked him. So, but as for the movie, though, and the combined odds, there's over 3,000 people predicting right now. The movie's in 10th place, and as people kind of know, we haven't had 10 Best Picture contenders since they kind of loosened the rules and allowed between 5 and 10. But at least it makes it into that. But among experts, it's number 11. And Todd Phillips is doing okay with the combined odds with 10 at number 10 among the directors, but he's way down in 32 for among the experts. So I don't think Todd should maybe, have to buy a new tux. He could buy a tux, I think, so, for something else. Anyway. Yeah, so, the movie itself is, it's funny because when it showed at Venice where it won the Golden Lion, it's like, at that point, it had like, I think, pretty high percentage on Rotten Tomatoes, but at this point it's at 69% positive. But in a way, I think that's almost good because it's giving people something to chew over and talk about. And that's what you want, I think, during award season, is not to be forgotten after you get glowing reviews and the next big movie opens. So it seems to be in the air. I think I've heard people that I wouldn't even think would ask me about it, like my sister-in-law, wondering if she should see it. And her favorite movie, I think, is Moulin Rouge, and I said it's not quite that. So,
yeah, I was looking through the reviews for the film last week as it was coming out, and on Metacritic, last I checked, it was still in like the yellow range, which is interesting because it has several reviews that Metacritic classifies as like a perfect 100, but it also has several yellow mixed reviews and several red negative reviews. So it's very, all over the spectrum, very divisive. And I wonder, with this box office, it reminds me a little bit, of course, the films are nothing like, but it reminds me a little bit of Bohemian Rhapsody last year, which had not great reviews. Actually, the reviews for Joker are better than on average than they were for Bohemian Rhapsody. But then Bohemian Rhapsody became such a huge, massive hit, almost $1 billion around the world. It became a genuine phenomenon, and it won 4 Oscars out of its 5. I think it won everything but Best Picture, including Best Actor for Rami Malek, which could be good news for Joaquin Phoenix. So I wonder, as it continues in the box office, nationally and internationally, I think it's up to almost $250 million already worldwide. It's 11th in our experts overall odds, but there are 14 experts who rank that among their top 10 films for Best Picture nomination. So I think we could see it rise there. And I'm also reminded of The Blind Side, another film, mixed reviews but huge hit. So it feels like, do do you think the box office can help make up for maybe some reviews that might leave doubt in some Oscar voters' minds?
Well, the thing with Bohemian Rhapsody is, I think it got a lot of repeat viewers, and the box office was humongous worldwide, and I think it's still the number one biographical film of all time at the box office. So, and given how many of those there are around, that's saying something. But I think this next week will tell the tale, because I don't know if there's another, film that is being targeted to this sort of group of people who love pop culture and they want to see something different in the mode of a comic book tale and an origin story. And if I don't know if there'll be repeat viewing like it was with Bohemian Rhapsody. So they're kind of two different animals, I think. Maybe two different audiences even too.
Yeah. It feels like Joker is just the type of film it is going to be a tougher sit for repeat viewing than Bohemian Rhapsody was. You get to sit down and enjoy the songs of Queen, whereas you sit down in Joker and enjoy just like a couple hours of sociopathy. So I'm not sure if it's going to have the legs that Bohemian Rhapsody did, but I think it's all like just from that opening weekend alone, it's destined to be one of the year's most successful films, certainly among the films that come out this Oscar season. And another thing that's interesting about it is that as averse as the Oscars are often to comic book movies, superhero movies, we're looking at a situation where the Joker could join a relatively small list of movie characters who have earned Oscar nominations for different actors in different movies. And that's a list that includes Queen Elizabeth I. You've got Cate Blanchett in Elizabeth and Elizabeth the Golden Age, and Judi Dench in Shakespeare in Love, Vito Corleone with Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro. Henry V was played by Laurence Olivier and Kenneth Branagh. Henry VIII was played by Charles Laughton and Richard Burton and Richard Nixon. Anthony Hopkins and Frank Langella, both nominated for playing him. So interesting. A lot of leaders, a lot of shady figures, not a lot of comic book villains, but of course Heath Ledger won posthumously for playing the Joker in The Dark Knight, although whether it's the same character technically is arguable, because this is a different interpretation set in a different time period. But I think it still counts. So what do you think about Joaquin Phoenix putting this character in that same company?
Well, I say it's very different than Heath Ledger's in a way. And Heath Ledger, you don't get the whole experience of, the origins of him. He's just there. And as I was reading something that someone wrote, that they liked that you didn't have to deal with all that. But that's all this movie deals with, is the background of what produced this creature. So, but here's the thing. I mean, much like Rami Malek, this whole movie is Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, even Robert De Niro, takes a back seat to him, because I believe he's probably in almost every single scene. And that's amazing. And Heath Ledger, it was a supporting part, but this is definitely, he's center stage almost the whole time. So the movie lives and dies with him and his performance. And I think it's pretty incredible. I didn't know what to expect, but I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, given some of the reviews I was reading. And I don't know. I think they're kind of being a little harsh on it. And maybe just like Bohemian Rhapsody, there was something about it that it set them off and, made a lot of think pieces that maybe didn't really serve the movie as well as it could. But I think it's an interesting movie and an interesting period right now of how people feel in general about what's going on in the world. So it touches something. It does touch a nerve. And I think that's maybe a good thing for a movie that is looking to win awards.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about The Dark Knight, or one of the interesting things about The Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger's Oscar candidacy for that is, of course, he tragically died the year that film came out, and that was paying tribute to him was such a big part of the story around the Oscar story around The Dark Knight, and how here was this classic villain character who had been played by Jack Nicholson, and everyone was skeptical about Heath Ledger's casting when it was originally announced, especially diehard fans. And then it turned out to, it became at the time the definitive Joker, which was an incredible achievement for a character that had this much history and this much strong fandom. Of course, Joaquin Phoenix is still with us, and so he this doesn't have that narrative, but Joaquin Phoenix does have an overdue narrative. He's been nominated for Gladiator, The Master, Walk the Line. I might be missing one.
It's 3.
Okay, so he's been nominated 3 times. He's been he's this very admired actor, and I think he's one of these actors who's kind of enigmatic in a way that they like your Daniel Day-Lewis's, these really kind of gritty actors who get deep down into their roles. And so the fact that he hasn't won yet, do you think that narrative could be part of what propels him?
Well, I do, because I did a poll about which actor is most overdue for an Oscar, and he won it. So at least our Gold Derby people who like taking our polls, they support that in a big way. So, yeah, I think he and Eddie Murphy, as you've written about, and also Renee Zellweger, they're all comeback kids this year. I think right now Renee is more definite because she's more overwhelming in her support in our charts, I think. But Joaquin could do it too. I do feel that way. And, I think people like Adam Driver, but I think they have a soft spot for Joaquin because we watched him grow up as a kid. Like it was that Parenthood movie with Steve Martin. I think that was maybe his first role. And also his brother dying. I think, people worried about him, what would happen. So I think, I think he's not your typical, I love him kind of guy, cuddly or whatever, but he does. I mean, somebody said in one of their reviews, he does the most acting, and sometimes that's also a plus if you're good at it. So.
Thank you for joining me again, Susan, and thanks to everyone for watching and or listening. You can visit goldderby.com to make or update your predictions now, not just for the Oscars, but also the Golden Globes, the SAG Awards, the Grammys, and a number of other events. We are not answering any of your reader or listener questions this week, but keep sending them in to Daniel@goldderby.com with the subject heading Gold Derby Podcast. And you can send them in on Twitter as well. We'll be paying attention to our mentions there. If you have a question you'd like us to answer about this or any other Oscar race. So we will be back in a future episode, I promise, with answers to your reader questions. So until then, thank you for joining.